Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reacting to my WikiTree Challenge Week video. Share, subscribe, and most importantly, enjoy. So let's get into it and see what WikiTree found for me. I'm looking forward to this. I didn't actually look at the video because I felt, it'd probably be better to give them my reaction in a video like this. So I haven't actually watched all of the video. I think I watched a few minutes of it, but I thought, I want to give them my reaction as it's only fair. So that's what we shall do. Let's have a look.
We're going to do is we're going to go ahead and let Karen
Spoiler
tell
alert,
us
I
a
never
little
really
bit
show
about
up much
these
here
discoveries.
throughout the whole thing.
I will. It has been a great week with folks who are veterans of Irish research showing us the way, and folks from other parts of the world diving in, and it's been great as usual to see the collaboration, and we like to look at 8 great-grandparents on these calls and talk about what we found. So starting from Daniel's father's father's father, that's John Loftus's part of his branches, and that's where we found Pat Burke. Patrick Burke is Daniel's 3rd great-grandfather. He's still somewhat of a mystery. He is named in marriages of 3 of his children. So as we're working backwards in Ireland, we see these marriage registers where we get the father of the bride and the groom, so it doesn't give us the mother, but we did find Pat in marriages for 3 of his children. And then we saw him as the father of a spinster daughter, and we saw him as a landholder for his son Luke, and then the 3rd was father of his spinster daughter Mary from Lavin.
And Mary was my 2 times great grandfather. That's John Loftus's wife. Now, spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot of John Loftuses in this, but Pat Burke would be my 2 times great grandfather's father-in-law.
Ireland.
And I would say that's one of the important things, wouldn't you think, Karen, as far as including the whole family, because then we do get that information, like the fact that he was a landholder.
Yes, and then we know we can go look at those valuations and get some more clues about where to look for these folks. And John's wife was Noone Loftus, and their
cousin, yes. Oh, right away, this is something I wanted, and I have one. I'll have to go and look into that now. Oh, this is exciting. And Noone is my great-grandmother, so this is... Oh, Catherine was Ellen's sister. So yes, they have it there. I just saw it now. Great-granddad.
It's common for, in my part of the family, everybody's grandmother was a Cherokee princess, and in this part of the family, everyone's father was born on the night of the big wind. This was Epiphany night in January 6, 1839. Now, when we look at the census records for Michael Noone, we found he's a little younger than that. He doesn't claim to have that sort of age, but even as we see here in the United States, as people get older, their claimed age tends to get older, or guess what, I was really born on the night of the big wind. Daniel mentioned that he'd love to have some new cousins, and we did find a 3rd cousin for Daniel here among the Noones. I know that Daniel has seen this obituary for his great-grand aunt, but I bet he hasn't met her great-granddaughter, who is one of our members, so we're hoping they'll be able to get together and collaborate on this Noone family, where you can see Catherine's obituary is mentioning her sister, Ellen Noone Loftus from Ireland. Our next great-grandparent is James Carney. So here, one of Daniel's 2nd great-grandfathers was known to be Anthony Carney, and his father was Bartholomew, who was already on Daniel's tree, but this week we found his wife was Mary Hughes.
Okay.
We have not found Mary's parents, but we learned that Mary was born about 1810 in County Mayo, and she was listed in the death records for 3 of her children to confirm.
And I, like Karen said, I didn't have Mary Hughes in my tree. I don't know how they found the name, nor how they found the other siblings, but that was one of the hard bits for me because I couldn't find any of Anthony's siblings, but I could have done it. Well, I was able to do it on my other great grandparents. I was able to find relatives to them, but I couldn't find anything here. The Carneys had always been a mystery, so this is exciting.
Confirm her name, and this death certificate is for Anthony's brother Patrick. And notice you can see on the death certificate that Bartholomew is written as Bartley is his nickname. I hadn't heard that before.
Patrick B. Carney, probably Bartholomew.
Yeah, and I noticed we had that on quite a few of those for these Irish couples, where it listed the father's name, but the mother's name was really, really difficult to find, and that was a lot of our brick walls.
Well, it's the same here. I think when I have married, they don't even ask who my parents are. And looking at the Lavins, Delia Lavin is Daniel's great-grandparent, and his second great-grandfather is Patrick Lavin. This really, looking at Patrick and his wife and his children, really represented how difficult the research can be. A preview for next week with the Smiths, when ancestors have the same names. Daniel's ancestor Patrick Lavin married Anne Brennan, so that sounds good. You start seeing records of people whose father is Patrick Lavin, mother is Anne Brennan, they're from County Mayo, and you're like, oh yes, I've got it. They're not just from Mayo, they're from Kiltama in Mayo. But guess what? We found 2 couples named Patrick Lavin and Anne Brennan. They were living within 10 kilometers of each other. One in, let me give it a go, Trinfohanan, and one in Canbrack. The one from Trinfohanan, they married in 1874 and had 5 children. And they were all out, 4 of them were still with them in 1911, but out on their own, not at home. The Canbrack couple, which is Daniel's ancestors, they were nearby, and they married 8 years later in 1882. They had 6 daughters, all still with them in 1911, 3 at home and 3 out on their own. But both of these couples had a Catherine Lavin, an Anne Lavin, and an Ellen Lavin. So
they must have known I was looking for them. I do actually remember looking for this, and it was just it was just annoying because I was still trying to figure out which one. But this is earlier on in my research. I thought something wasn't right, but no, the location hammered it down. It was the Canbrack one.
We had some fun. And both of the Ellens, we believe, unless we wouldn't put it past there being a third Patrick Lavin and Anne Brennan in Mayo in this time period.
You never
would
know.
Not be surprised at all. But both of them had Ellens, we think, who wound up in the U.S. We know that that Daniel's great aunt, great grand aunt Ellen, married Henry Mandel and was in New York for a time.
Yeah.
And then there was another Ellen who died in St. Louis, but very contemporary, both in America, both with these certificates with, Patrick and Anne on them. And this is where Daniel's connected to our global tree right now. So Delia's sister Ellen had a daughter named Lorraine Mandel, and she married a man with deeper American roots, and we found his dad already on the tree. But of course, those connections are subject to change anytime as we keep growing and moving and pruning and trimming and expanding our branches in our global tree.
Just a disclaimer, this is on my maternal side. The O'Clearys are my... Patrick O'Cleary is my... Patrick O'Cleary is my great-grandfather. I'm thinking of his father. So anything on the O'Cleary side is actually going to be a surprise to me. Some bits I did already know, because Mindy kindly sent me the stuff through, so I am surprised still. I did never think I'd find anything, so let's keep on watching.
We looked at the O'Clearys, or the Clearys. We see them in English rendering. And here we found Michael Walsh. Michael is Daniel's third great grandfather. And this was exciting because we found a baptism listing Michael Walsh with parents Patrick and Bridget Heffron.
Wow.
So that was a great find for us this week.
Right. And it is a very likely parents' names baptism. Unfortunately, the week always goes so fast, where we feel we just can't get enough time in. And
I'm always thinking on Wednesday morning of all what if we went over here? And hey, I wish we could spend more time with the Lavins. And,
the joys of genealogy. There's no end.
Yeah.
That's the way these weeks always go.
Okay.
Another great grandmother is Kathleen Foley, and a mother was found for Catherine Mary Foley, who married Patrick O'Cleary, and Catherine's mother's name, or Kathleen, is Bridget Naughton, and she married Michael Shaughnessy in 1834 in Shanagolden.
Goodness.
And we've got a 19-year gap between the marriage that we found for Michael and Bridget and the baptism of the first child that has been found. So we suspect that there are more Shaughnessy children that we just haven't found baptisms for yet.
Yes, and we did find some interesting gaps in, sometimes just terribly inconvenient. 2 years missing in a marriage register or something. And
like we've got all the marriages for this parish except for the 2 years that you yeah. And then our final couple, Patrick Whelan.
This is my maternal grandmother's line now. Patrick Whelan is my great-grandfather, or Pax as he was known also, P-A-X. And Carey is Pax's mother. His mother was Bridget Carey. So this is on her line.
And on this line we found John Carey, Daniel's third great-grandfather, who married Marie Casey. They had 6 children that we found from 1844 to 1857, so 6 and 13 years will keep you busy.
Number 6 is my great-great-grandmother on that list.
John died in 1878. He was 75 years old. He got pneumonia, and it was said to be a 17-day bout of pneumonia that he fought until he succumbed. It's said that Patrick's parents, that John Carey were James Carey and Mary.
So another spot where if we would have had a few more days.
Right, we could have maybe, because you can see how hard we're working to say, well, is it that James Carey? What about the other James Carey? We've got to exclude that before we can make the connection.
Okay, now it's my great-grandmother,
and our
Pax's
final great-grandparent, Catherine Fraher. And we did prove some parent.
Oh, I've always said I never had anyone in the 18, 21, 31, 41 or 51 because I was never that lucky. It appears I did not look hard enough.
It's here, the parents of Edmund Walsh, Daniel's third great-grandfather, were proven to be Richard Walsh and Judith Hoban. Right. They appeared in 1821 in the census for Mooncoin in County Kilkenny with 2 children. There's research notes on the profile about possible parents, possible siblings, and this happened when one of our challenge team members found a report of his marriage in a newspaper, and that listed his parish, so they knew where to go looking.
Wow.
And we really enjoyed and were saddened to read about Edmund's son Peter. Peter Walsh was the youngest of the children of Edmund, and he was born late into the marriage. his father died when he was just 4 years old, and his mother died when he was just 7.
Oh,
He
my.
went to Canada, and he served in World War I, which was not something that a lot of Daniel's family members would have done. He served for Canada, and unfortunately, he was later found to have mental deficiencies that didn't make him a great soldier. He enlisted again. He served for a little while and got sent to hospital in England, and again found to have mental issues that prevented his service. We found in records that 2 of his sisters spent time in an asylum. Later in life, he was hearing voices and only sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. The poor guy, he was discharged from service in April of 1918. And we found in the census that he lived in the hospital in Selkirk, a hospital for mental disease, from 1921 all the way until his death in 1932 at the age of 57.
Oh, my goodness.
So quite a story.
Now, for those of you who don't know, my great-grandmother Catherine, Fraher, as they're talking about there, her mother was committed to an asylum, and I think it was 1898. And in 1901, obviously she was still in the asylum, and she was in the asylum still in 1911, with the cause being listed as mania, and it said it was hereditary. Now I know where this came from, but I could never figure out where it came from. Obviously, if it said it was hereditary, it was obviously in the family somewhere, but I didn't know where. So this is, yeah, that's new.
About like cousin Peter.
Right. And it was so striking that several times in between, they did the attestments and said, oh, he's fine. So,
right, because you know,
great.
It looks like a nice young man. He'll be great. We'll send him to serve. That's what he wants to do.
And then after a little while, things would happen, and they'd say, well, he's not going to be, and not necessarily that he was completely mentally ill. One of them just said, he's not good soldier material, basically.
Yeah.
So he's not going to succeed at this. We may as well just let him go. And then he would turn around several years later and attest again and re-enlist. Mm-hmm. And, that they went back and forth, and he was able to sometimes gain that clarity, I guess you could say.
Right,
that they would. Very interesting.
In this line, we also working on Margaret Quinlan.
That is
lots of research.
That'd be Catherine's maternal grandmother. This is Mary Walsh's mother, Margaret Quinlan.
Lots of collaboration here, and we found that her parents were Pierce Quinlan and Catherine Purcell. Now, Pierce comes from the same name as Peter. The Greek is Petrus, that's a rock, and Pierce is the French version. We imagine that came over to England with the Normans. So back in 1066, we start seeing Pierce rather than Peter. We've got up to about 16 different spellings of the name just in English, and then of course you've got.
I was expecting John, to be fair.
Peter and Pierce in Irish as well. So lots of Peters this week.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and we had Patty, who he was such immense help. Patty Waldron was such an immense help this week.
Thank you.
And he helped us with a lot of that as far as knowing, what the spellings were and the locations and the names between, the records and then what we would put down.
Right.
Right, and deciding what rendering of the parishes we would put in the place names, because on Catherine Fraher's line is Daniel's second great-grandfather, another Daniel Fraher from Waterford, and he was a great proponent of the Irish language, had lessons taught, and was a supporter of Irish nationalism as well. He was christened in Waterford and born not far from Dunbarton. People were hungry there in the 1870s and the 1880s. A lot of laborers were out of work, and Daniel leased a field there near Shandon, I believe, in Dungarvan in 1885,
Yeah.
and now everyone calls it
Fraher
Fraher
Field,
Field.
yeah. I haven't
Sorry
been
if
there.
I'm
I
butchering
need
your
to.
ancestor's name,
Yes.
because we don't have Patty with us to set us straight. So, like I said, Daniel was definitely a promoter of the language, collector of Irish manuscripts. We had a lot of fun with the dog licenses this week because they were some of the first records we had easy access to, and we would be like, oh, look, this year Daniel's got a red and white terrier, and he's still got the red and white terrier he's licensing again next year for 2 shillings. And the black and white greyhound, and then another part of the family, they had black curs. There were a lot of black curs. I don't know if you can tell that Coco the dog is here, and she has found the squeaky toy.
I did not even know he owned dogs, so that's a new one on me. And I don't know why I'm finding the dog license bit so interesting, but it's, yeah, that kind of adds a bit of a human layer to me.
And the dog licenses were more abundant than the census records, so not only do we know all about Daniel's ancestors, but we know about their dogs as well.
Yes, and for those of you that watch the Saturday live cast, that was the type of record that I had hinted at. It was the first time we'd had that come up this year, so I thought it was kind of cool.
Glad to be a first.
It was to get to know, you know, you wish you for detailed information on the ancestors, and here you are with the breed, the markings, and the sex of the dog. Well, how did we do? I love your fan charts. We all do. So.
Ooh, wow.
I know, me and my fan charts.
God, that's
and
going
you know,
out quite
this
a bit,
week
isn't it?
Daniel wasn't expecting us to have a lot of bounty points and brick wall points. You know, he knew those brick walls were solid.
Goodness
They're not
me.
that far back. And so if the records aren't there, they aren't there. And one of the other problems, of course, was the commonality of the names. You know, he just had so many common names that had to be looked at, and it was really great to see the collaboration. We are a collaborative site, so it was really nice. You know, people would jump into Discord and ask for help, and you'd have 3 or 4 people attacking the same profile and looking at records and seeing how it came out. So at any rate, you know, Daniel had said he was excited if we even found extra children or, you know, a story about one of his ancestors. He said, oh, you guys aren't going to find anything. You're not.
And I wasn't expecting them to. I'll say that much. I'll admit to that. Goodness me. The fact that the fan chart goes out, I'm trying to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations on one, I was not expecting. And I'm just going to say it now. Thank you to all the people who took the time to work on my tree. I am amazed. I will thank you again at the end. This is really, really something.
Not going to get through these brick walls, but we did. And so these are the charts that I use and some of the captains use. Now the yellow spots, this is of course his 9 generation fan chart, what we started with, and the yellow spots are all of the available brick walls. So he had a lot of them. And then where you see the little tiny dots, and I did a little blow up in the corner, like where we team kind of congregated in the one part of his mother's tree. Those are the brick walls, and Daniel will get a copy of those so he can look and see exactly who it is, you know, that
I'll be going to look now.
Where the profiles are and where those brick walls were broken at.
Yes, I loved, I mean, there was more, you know, merging of duplicates and splitting apart, just really finely peeling apart these families from the ones that would confuse you and tempt you to conflate the different profiles. So really strong teamwork this week.
Yeah. And then I'm going to go ahead, poor Daniel. I really feel for him. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the collaboration before we get to the questions for Drew. We have several ways we collaborate. Once again, this is a very collaborative community, and so we all work together instead of, you know, each people taking a little spot. Now on the left there is the spreadsheet. We use that to hopefully put down the profile that we're working on, so that, you know, if you have 25 people in there working on it, you're not tripping over other people's work or making having somebody lose work if they're working on that profile. Now, on the right-hand side, you see the G2G posts. We put those out each week for each guest, and that's where people can go and claim bounty points, put interesting finds, things like that. We didn't have a lot of conversations. Sometimes people aren't in Discord. They want to have their conversation on the G2G posts. We just didn't have a lot of that this time, which was fine. And then, our final and most important way is Discord, and that's our live chat that we use. Now, we are a global site, so we have people from all over the world. At any time, day or night, there's bound to be somebody working on these profiles. And so this makes it really easy for us to go in and, say, and not necessarily as much this week, but on any week, say, hey, I need a translation done, or who's good at finding obituaries? I need somebody that, has newspaper access, things like that. Or, I think I found the right Patrick, but there's 10 of them. So am I on the right track or not? And several people will just stop and go, let us look, and, work together to weed out the records that definitely are not the person you don't need. And so Discord is just invaluable. And sometimes people are just there to cheer each other on, and that's just as important for us,
I'm thinking there's probably a little bit of that with my week, and I definitely needed encouraging to keep going with some of the people in my tree, not to name a few.
It's good to get that conversation going and make people feel involved and know, that you're working together as a team to make progress on this. Now, we do keep points. The points aren't really the reason most of us are doing this, but a little extra motivation doesn't hurt. And mostly it just helps us feel like we know where we're at, as far as progress. Now, there's two ways to make points during this, of course. You can get the big ones, which are the bounty points, and that's 10 points each for the first brick wall ancestor you add to a line. And then there's individual points, and that would be for the nuclear family. So siblings, children that you add. And let me tell you, those add up a lot. We've had some weeks where people weren't even getting bounty points, and they were way up there in the scores because of the nuclear family. Now, of course, with Daniel, we didn't have that as much, just because, like I said, his brick walls were so close in. But for ours, we had a last minute upset, which was kind of cool, because I will say that Maddie Harbin, who's one of the people that always works really hard on these, she was in the most valuable person slot until just a little bit ago, and Patty jumped right over her, which was just fun because, she's had MVP a couple of times already.
But thanks to both of you. I don't mind who's number one. You both did brilliantly.
And this is Patty's first time participating, so that was really great to see him jump up there. Donna Bowman is another one that participates every week. She's willing to get in there and learn the record. She works on any area. She's good at asking questions, and it's nice to see her recognized as well as everybody else. Now, Melanie McComb, she's an upcoming guest, so she's been participating the last couple of weeks.
Right, and then, keep it in mind, Drew. You can be featured
in my spare time. Gotcha.
Yeah, in all your free time. In all your free time. Because we know that that's why all these genealogy stars are here. Because if you're a genealogist, you never have time to work on your own tree.
No.
Right.
So see, we're putting it on WikiTree for you for public access. And then, of course, our anonymous Sharky is last. So that's our fifth place.
And Mrs. Sharkey actually had some Cormac connections already on the tree before the challenge started, so that was cool to see.
And then I'm going to go ahead and show you this and then move it down where I can read it better. This is the score sheet we use. So
thank you to every single one. I'll say that now. The fact that you were very nice to work on my tree for the week. And just find all the bits that I couldn't find. And we'll go in a little more at the end. But I'm blown away by how many people chose to work on my tree and just put in the amount of time that they did and find what they found. Wow.
So there's 24 people listed, which means there's more than 24 people that were working on it, because people don't get points for things like working on a space page, or, you know, if they're doing the article lookups, things like that. Peripheral families, sometimes we go down a rabbit hole, you know, and you start adding the sisters and the husbands and the in-laws, and, you know, the more connections that the more people that we add like that, the more likely other connections will be made as far as connecting them to the global tree and finding cousins. So, you know, they don't get points for that, but they do it anyways. And then let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. Everything updated. For total points, we had 187 total points. So that includes our bounty points and those individual points that we talked about. Now, created ancestors, there were 43 direct ancestors added to Daniel's tree, which is great. And then created relatives, those are those nuclear family members where we talked about where you add the children within one step of the direct ancestor. And there were 84 of those added. So people were busy. And, you know, each one of those was checked out carefully. They weren't just, oh, I'm going to grab a census. It says these are the kids and throw it up there. You know, they worked really hard to make sure that they had the correct children for the correct parent with all those common names.
Ideally.
And, you know, it took a little bit of extra time, but it was definitely worth it. And then the bounty points, which Daniel wasn't expecting any, and wound up with 60 points. So that's 6 brick wall ancestors. That's a lot more than 0.
Wow.
And I know, you know, he's got to be excited to hear that.
Yeah.
And next 2 numbers are just once again to help us see where we are with our progress. Now, 325 individual profiles edited this week. This is this week's work. And then this is crazy. Total edits. And once again, we don't count anything that's beyond the direct ancestors and those nuclear relatives. So this is just the work on those. Every time somebody went in, added a date, made a correction, added more sources, it counted as an edit. 1,418 edits in a week.
Goodness me.
So yay to the team, because you guys worked really hard, really hard.
I'm excited.
And I like seeing that. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and remove that out of there for a minute.
So what are my thoughts on this? To put it plain and simple, I'm astonished. I really am. Because I think it goes to show how powerful collaboration can be. And I'll put my hands up to it. I undermined it. I genuinely did not think that there was going to be many things found, but I am over the moon, pleasantly surprised, and I'm going to be going on WikiTree and spend a bit more time with it. So thank you so much to every single one who worked on my tree and took the time out of your day to look through my tree, be it on my mother's side, be it on my father's side, any person, and just add that extra layer of, you know, research and sourcing and just anything. It's probably the worst way of putting it, but it's the only way I can think of. But no, I am truly, truly grateful. If I kind of wish I actually had, you know, harsh that Marion Burkwood actually held up every time she really liked something during her WikiTree challenge. But genuinely, thank you, everyone. And on that note, thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next video. Bye, everyone.